Okay, great. So obviously, just for the recording, my name's Ben Blackmore. I'm men's team, first team head coach down at Havant Hockey Club. This is, I guess I'm going into my second year of ACP now. So obviously the phase 2 piece that we've got to do is what is talent? So I will just look to share my screen now. Just to make sure we have all got the same information that we're working to on this program, guys. Otherwise, I have not done the right activity, but let's just make sure that this is correct. So desktop 1, let's share that. So this was our self-task to do. Everyone agree with that? Yeah. Okay, so this was put it on the forum, and then we had to identify a minimum of 2 players, and obviously look at where are they now, what are their superpowers, super focus, how are you going to work with them, progress this, and then review after a 6-week period. So, and then they've asked us to do like a 10-minute presentation. So hopefully my presentation won't last that long, guys, because I'm not a big believer in waffles. So, you know, I sort of cut straight through to things. You know, I created a few mantras about, you know, keep it so simple, you know, and every little thing matters. So this is the forum that we've all sort of used and posted on. I think, has everyone done their bit on there as well?
I still need to add it, but I have some thoughts to add, which we talked about at the start. So
what I'll do is I'll share this sort of PowerPoint presentation that I put together here, guys. So, you know, the question of what makes a talented player, you know, I look for attitude and then ability within that. So for me, you know, if a player's got the right attitude, then basically it feels like I can coach them. Yeah. So if they're with the right attitude and they look like they want to learn, then that, to me, that's the signs of talent. Now, having been around hockey a long time and then worked with, you know, different types of hockey players, from young to kids that have just started up to, you know, I was very privileged to go and spend some time with the under-18 boys up at Lilleshall and Bisham. And then obviously through the program, been to see the GB teams up at Bisham as well. So you get to see, you know, what effectively the best should look like at these events. So you can see, you know, what talent looks like. And you know, I'm sure with you guys as well, when you see a player, you can see whether or not I think they're talented. And that, for me, then comes into that effort and ability. So what I look at with them as well is their game management, game intelligence. And then within that, you know, you look at leadership skills, mental attitude, physical capabilities, core playing skills. Big questions I ask myself: what do they do to make a difference? And that's a positive difference on the pitch, because talent can have a negative difference if it's too ego driven. And what I mean by that is, you know, talent can hold on to the ball too much and try and do too much. So do they create better outcomes? How do they positively impact the game? And the big thing for me is team fit, that teamsmanship and camaraderie. So that, for me, that is kind of like my makeup that I look for with talent. Now, what I've done to help with that is I created a bit of an equation. And this is, you know, sort of back from my background. I've run a healthcare advertising agency for, you know, best part of 25 years, guys. So I've launched global brands across the US, Europe, and the Far East. And this is in the pharmaceutical world, where we have to delve into the science behind a product or brand, and then use healthcare communication strategies and techniques that I've learned through advertising creativity. So Graham was talking to me earlier about JP Morgan and how they use 3 steps to identify talent. The amount of workshops that I've been through in terms of 360 talent creation and looking at talent, not only as individuals, but the psychological meaning behind why people do things. I've used that to actually create this EPV formulation for myself. And this, for me, is really passion, desire, effort, belief, ability, time, sacrifice, and commitment over time. That gives me the platform to help develop, nurture talent. And then everything I do, so everything I create, is aligned to one of these within that equation. So when I talk to the players, I'll say, right, have you got the right desire? You know, can I turn up to training? Are we putting in the right amount of effort? So I can set up the best practice in the world, but if they haven't got the belief in that practice and they're not putting any effort in, then it fails. And so that, for me, they get constant reminders to say, look, where are we? You know, because I'm now coaching, obviously, we've gone back into National League South, which is great. You know, first part of my challenge done. So I had players with ability. They had talent, but I needed to identify why they didn't succeed as a team last year. So that was my big thing for them. So what that put me onto really is, you know, a quote that I picked up a little while ago: high performance is like a habit, like any other. With time, it becomes as natural as brushing your teeth. And Kelly Holmes, you know, success is only 20% talent. That's a quote that I use because talent is important, but it's only a small part of the equation. So if we're looking at talent, what is talent? Is that success? Is that developing a player? There's lots of questions that could come around to that. So talent for me, it's a lot deeper than just ticking the boxes of ability and things like that. So what I did at Havant is I created a high performing team culture. So I got them to change their mindset, behavior, and how that affected the team. So their performance then rippled out from their minds to their actions and their teams. So I don't know if you've heard of something called the ironic process theory, but you know, this is something that Brett has sort of helped me really sort of identify through our chats as well. You know, it's if you play golf and you've got a shot over water, and you go, don't hit the water, don't hit the water, don't hit the water. Inevitably, your ball goes in the water. So what I got the guys working on was stop, instead of saying negative things and instead of being negative, we focused on like the positive. So I went down there and I got introduced to something called the Haven't Bobble. Now, what that effectively meant was players kept missing the ball. So for me, I was like, well, why do you call it the Haven't Bobble? That's just an excuse. So I changed their mindset into, we call it the Haven't Trap, and nobody misses the ball. And what a difference that made to their development and their talent, and what a difference it made to our games and our outcomes when everybody started compressing on the ball and trapping every single ball. Now, I used a few pretty harsh techniques to get them to do that, i.e. if they missed some, they had to run a lap. And whether it's the pitch or not, God, all of a sudden you watch people make an effort to just stop the ball. So that was a mindset change for them as well there. Now, I look at the All Blacks. I don't know if you guys have come across the All Blacks mantra, but this is a mantra that they adopted and put on their sort of winning ways back in 2020. Sweep the sheds. You know, it's basically meaning that nobody's better than anybody else, you know. And I don't know if you know, but Richie McCall, when on his last game ever for the All Blacks, arguably the greatest ever All Black, his last game, he cleaned out the changing rooms, you know. And the other number 6 that I use on there, no dickheads. All right. There is no room for people who have got attitudes and dickheads. And that, for me, I might not use that language with younger players, but I'll say no idiots, for example. If someone thinks that they are above the rest of the team, then they need a talking to. They need some special care. And that will help with the talent. I don't know if you guys have come across this Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But I adapted this because obviously when I inherited Havant, I'd lost 7 key players from the squad. You know, they were pretty much down in the doldrums. You know, I got told by players inside the club and outside the club, we probably won't go up this year. There's going to be a lot of players that are going to be disillusioned. So this, to me, helped me identify where they were mentally, you know, in terms of were they highly engaged, almost engaged. What could I do with their mental well-being and their thoughts around hockey to help them get down to actually enjoying hockey again, loving hockey again? So what that looked like is I created an online Google Drive spreadsheet that I use, and I keep track of all of the players as I go. So, you know, I don't mind showing you this. I put down their notes. They have their flair play, super focus, PCA ability, game management, everything's scored and marked. Now, all of the players are given the opportunity to have a two-way discussion with me on that. The reality is I only had 7 players, maybe 8 that were engaged. I had to reach out to another 4 youngsters to get them to be engaged. You know, senior experienced hockey players, they just want to have a good training session, have a good briefing before the game and have a good game. They don't really want to do much else in the way of their development. But the youngsters, they really bought into this because all of a sudden they had a coach that was giving them markers, and this really was every sort of 12 weeks, they'd have that opportunity. So particularly at the Christmas break, that gave me some time to work with them individually, give them some pointers and give them some individual pieces to work on. They also got sent a talent development plan. So this is something that I worked out. So the under 18 boys that I did, the 4 players, I got them to actually score this themselves. So I obviously spoke about game intelligence earlier, decision making, positional versatility, tactical understanding, speed of thought, their technique. So when they were moving, carrying the ball, deception, huge in the modern game, goal scoring, defending, then mentality and fitness. It's fair to say 2 out of the 4 of the boys were pretty much spot on. A couple of the other 2 that I sort of worked with, they didn't really understand a lot of the questions. And so I had to take a step back with them and say, well, this is all part of hockey. Once they understood it, then they could fill this out. So now they've had an end of season review and they've all been given something to work on over the summer, basically. So each player were given the opportunity to complete a swap with me. And I had about 8 of the players do this with me. And, they were generally the players that were on the bench that weren't getting enough pitch time and they wanted to develop. The starting 11, they pretty much just said, no, great job, love the sessions, off we go. So that, for me, that's really how I help develop talent with the players at Havant. And this includes under 18s as well. And I know in particular the club have adopted so that they're going to start sort of looking at this and rolling this out anywhere. So, that's my stuff in a nutshell, guys. So just open to any questions if anyone has any.
Ben, can I ask
Yeah.
how many are in your squad? How many players, ideally, blue sky thinking, would you want to engage with this?
So the whole squad, I keep track of basically the 1s and the 2s. So this is anyone that's on the horizon. So the 2s that haven't this year were made up of myself, another dad, another old player, of 1 young mid-20s goalie, and the rest were all under 18s. So this included everyone that was on my radar in terms of first 11 now, anyone that could come along to training or anyone that could be training this year. So around 26 in total.
And in terms of keeping on top of that and it doing what you need it to do, time input, time from you?
It was a lot of time. I'm not going to lie, Michelle. I spent a lot of time on hockey at Havant this year. In realistic terms, we had training Tuesdays, Thursdays. I played Saturday, so I didn't include that, and I had games on Sundays. So that meant Monday I was doing my post-game reviews. Fridays I was doing my pre-match planning. I was probably spending 25 to 30 hours a week on hockey.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, lots of time.
And do you think, I'm going to ask you a tough question now, was it worth it? Did it have the impact that you wanted it to have?
Yeah, so we scored more goals this year than we have done in their last 5 years combined, conceded less than anyone else in the league. Team morale was probably the highest it's been. It's fair to say everybody loved it. We got promoted with 2 games spare. So, yeah, 100%. It had the positive effect. There's a few players that obviously had their princess moments. I think that's undoubtedly what's going to happen in hockey. But, it's high-level hockey. But overall, I think the club and the players were delighted to bounce back up and get promoted.
So, Ben, if you're spending that long on this on the hockey each week and you have 2 sessions plus a game,
yeah,
when do you go through this with the players?
So this was sent to them at the start of the season, and they have access to a Dropbox. So through WhatsApp, they get reminded where everything is. And so I use it's a marketing ploy, but basically no one can ever remember the 7 dwarfs. So you really only focus on 3 key messages. So each week they would have 3 things to work on collectively as a team, and maybe 1 or 2 of them I'd pull aside pre or post training, and they'd have 1 or 2 things to work on. So highly intelligent players, I can give them 4 or 5 things to work on. young players, I give them maybe 1 or 2 things to work on. And that really is because of the attention span. And obviously, is it pre-training, post-training? But Johnny, repetition, repetition, repetition. So our principles, for example, once we set those out, that was it. Those were our principles that we worked to from Christmas. We literally said, this is what we do in this situation, in this scenario. We obviously played quarters. So in this quarter, this is what we're going to do. And we, you know, I varied our circle penetrations and things like that. And we had huge successes. So to answer your question, it was regular. It was constant. They had a link to a Dropbox that they could read and review anytime.
It was kind of just little bits with players as often as you could, just a couple of them. So you wouldn't have kind of sit down and go, right, I'm going to meet with this person now for 10 minutes, this person now for 10 minutes.
No point.
Couple of minutes. Yeah.
We had in the whole season, we had one classroom session, which was a video session,
right,
which was on a training night. And that was because I changed our press. And everybody nodded and they were like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, I get it. No, they didn't. So I had to sit down and do Subutios on a board and a video. And once we'd done that, and then I designed a practice specifically about learning the new press. And that night, it was pissing down with rain. It was coming in sideways.
Not a great time to practice the press.
They loved it because they no one complained because they knew we were all doing something that we needed to learn together.
Okay,
so
that's good. I thought you meant it was you did the classroom when it was pissing down with rain.
No, exactly. That's why we were only supposed to be in there 20 minutes. We were in there nearly an hour.
Yeah.
So cool. Any other questions, guys, or is that all make sense? Happy with that?
It was good, thank you.
All good for me, thanks.
That's all right, no worries. So I'll just stop that